Hi everybody, my name is Victoria. Welcome back to my channel. Today I am bringing you my winter reading stats and a ranking of all the books that I read in winter. This is something I started doing on my channel kind of here and there, but I haven't quite been consistent about doing it every season, mostly just because I keep forgetting. So I'm trying to make a real commitment to do this at the end of every season. So here we are. And just to clarify, when I say winter, I mean December, January, February, and sort of the beginning of March. I am including one book that I finished, actually two books that I finished at the beginning of March, but I read most of them across the winter and I associate with winter. So I am including a couple of those that were finished just at the tip of March. So that is what I mean by winter when I'm classifying these. So first I want to share my page count. So I read a total of 4,446 pages in winter, which was a total of 14 books, and my shortest book was, I think, 67 pages, so I guess that's more of a short story. And my longest book was, what is my longest book? I guess it depends if you count Lord of the Rings as one book. That might actually be the longest book, but my longest book was 756 pages. I'm averaging about 4 to 5 books per month. So December, I read 5. Yeah, I read 5 books in December. January, I read 4. And then in February, I read 3. And then at the beginning of March, I finished 2. So I read most of those books in February, really. So yeah, 4 or 5 books per month on average, which is great. It's actually better than I have been reading in like the past year. So it's been like 2 or 3 books a month, sometimes 1 book a month. And that's because I had a baby in 2022. And so ever since then, my reading life was not quite the same. So it's finally starting to get a little bit more like regular as my schedule is a little more normal and I'm like getting used to the new life stage that I'm in. So I'm very happy with 4 or 5 books a month right now. For my genre breakdown, 6 of these books are fantasy. 3 are historical fiction, sort of mixed with fantasy. Some of them are historical fiction with some magical realism or like a fantasy element. So I just labeled them as historical fiction at the moment because I wasn't quite sure if I should count them as fantasy because I feel like at their core, they're more historical fiction. So yeah, 6 fantasy, 3 historical fiction, 2 sci-fi, 1 romance, and 2 nonfiction books for a total of 5 different genres. So I'm definitely skewing very heavily to fantasy at the moment, which is pretty normal. 6 of the books are 5-star reads, which is great. I'm so happy about that I've really been enjoying a lot of the books. 4 of them are 4-star books. 4 of them are 3-star books. And happily, I can report no 2-star or 1-star books, which is a great feeling that I've been picking things up that have mostly been working for me. So very happy about that. Those are all the stats that I wanted to share with you. And now I want to share with you my ranking of all these books. So starting at number 14, I'm going to put in Long, Chills, and Queso. And this is by Brandon Sanderson. It is a short story that was sort of a surprise for people who backed the Secret Project Kickstarter. And I got this on ebook. I don't have the physical copy because I didn't back the the top tier of that where they actually gave them the physical copy of this. So I did get the ebook though, and I read it pretty much as soon as I got it because I saw it was so short. And so this is a science fiction Brandon Sanderson short story, and it was one of his very early works. I almost want to say I think I saw that he actually wrote this like as a student, like he was a writing student, so super early in his career and just like experimenting with things in this. And it was okay. It's certainly not well fleshed out, and I had a lot of questions about it. It was an interesting world. It's sort of like a detective story, and there's like kind of a robotic element to it, like an artificial intelligence element to it. And so it was so weird to see a murder mystery kind of detective novel from Brandon Sanderson. And it was so short, I just felt like it didn't really have a chance to get going. So I couldn't really rate this any more than 3 stars. But it's one of those things that's like, if this was a novel, I may be interested in that. In general, I just think Brandon Sanderson does a lot better with a long form. So a short story from him is definitely a strange experience. But yeah, so if you're curious about it, definitely try it. It's got some interesting elements. You can definitely see how he wants to play with hard magic systems at a very early point in his career. And so that was kind of fun to see. But yeah, give it a go if you're a Brandon Sanderson fan, but I would by no means like start here. Don't start with this. It's not a great picture of his writing. In spot number 13, I'm going to put The Autobiography of Santa Claus by Jeff Gwynne. This was a Patreon read for my own Patreon. This one was suggested by Dia from Novel Idea. My Patreon works like a book club where we all suggest things, and then I do a random wheel spin and it'll land on someone's suggestion. So every month we're reading something that one of us is suggesting. And this was for the month of December. This was perfectly fine from like a cozy reader standpoint. It wasn't unenjoyable. It was just really wacky at a certain point. It gets very strange. It starts a little bit more with a serious, more historical tone. And what I thought this book was going to do was like go through the history of Santa Claus and make it kind of like a narrative. And I thought that was going to be really cool. But at a certain point, it's not that anymore. And so that was just kind of a letdown to me. More just my own expectations on the book and what I thought it was doing. And then it takes like a hard left turn. So that's why this one was a little bit lower on my list. It was a cozy, sweet read for Christmas time. So I would still recommend it if you're looking for that around that time of year. In spot number 12, I'm going to put Hello Stranger by Catherine Center. This was the contemporary romance that I read this winter. And this one, I just thought that you had to suspend your disbelief a little too much in certain places. It had an interesting premise. It's got a premise about face blindness, which I learned is a real thing and a condition that you can actually have. So I learned something from this. Our main character has face blindness after having brain surgery, and it's kind of like a fluke that happens after her surgery. And so she has to now navigate not being able to recognize people. And then on top of that, she also paints portraits for a living. So you can imagine how awful that would be. To me, this one was just okay. I would try Catherine Center again. I think it had some strong points, but overall, just okay. So that's why this is so low on my list. But I would try her again. I have another book with like a red cover. It's like Walk Away or something like that I will try. In spot number 11, I'm going to put The Neverending Story by Michael Ende. And this, I was surprised that I didn't enjoy it as much as I wanted to. I buddy read this with Christy Lewis from Christy Lewis, Dostoevsky in Space. And I actually read this in high school too. And I loved it then. I think I read it when I was probably 15 or 16 years old. And I loved The Neverending Story. Sorry, my dogs are doing all kinds of things in the background here. But I thought I liked it in high school. And I was like, this is like the best fantasy novel ever. I love reading fantasy. So at least got me interested in fantasy when I was in high school. But upon reread, I had some issues with it and the structure of it. It's very different from the movie in the second half, which is fine. I'm not saying it has to be like the movie. The first half of this book actually is a lot like the 80s movie. And then the second half does its own thing. And it's almost like a second storyline, like it should have been a sequel instead of all in one book. And it just is really different on the second half. So I didn't think the second half was as strong as the first half. And so that was where I was a little bit disappointed. But at least now I know. I'm happy that I reread this, so I kind of know where I stand on it. So yes, this is number 11. In spot number 10, I'm going to put The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy by Douglas Adams. This was another Patreon read, and Tiffany picked this one. And I'm so glad she did, because I've had this for a while now. Looks like I probably got it at a thrift store at some point. And who knows how long it's been sitting on my shelf. So I finally got to read this one and really, really enjoyed it. It was just a fun time, satirical. So there's some things he's poking fun at throughout this, poking fun at society, the absurdity of humanity. And it's just like super wacky. If you like the kind of humor in Monty Python or Doctor Who, that kind of wackiness, and it just gets more and more ridiculous, that's the tone of this. So if you like that kind of thing, you will love this. If you like British humor, you will love this. And luckily I do. So yeah, I don't think it's like my new favorite book ever, but it was a good time. I thought it ends really abruptly though. And I do want to continue with the series. So hopefully I'll pick up book 2, which is The Restaurant at the End of the Universe. Hopefully I'll pick that up relatively soon, because I do want to continue in the series. In spot number 9, I have 4 Sacred Plays by Dorothy L. Sayers. This was for a read-along in December, and I did it with a few booktubers, and it was great to talk about. We only read one of the plays, and actually I've only read 2 of the plays of this collection. So I have not actually finished this collection, but I've read about half of it. So I might have like put this a little bit higher on my list if I had actually finished it, but I didn't. The one play that we did read was He That Should Come. We read that for the read along. I really just think Dorothy L. Sayers had so many interesting ideas, and I love her speculation. She's so good at speculating of what would this have been like? What would it have been like at this time in history? And then she just like takes that idea and runs with it. And it's always fun seeing her thoughts and her speculations. Very philosophical. She kind of waxes poetic about some things and some like big ideas. So I really enjoy her writing and her ideas. These plays are interesting. I do want to finish it. So I feel a little bad rating it now because I haven't actually finished this whole collection. But yeah, from the ones that I read, I enjoyed one and didn't enjoy the other one as much. So that's why it's in spot number 9. In spot number 8, I'm going to put Attack on Titan, Volume 1. This was also a Patreon read. So this was picked kind of by both Christy and Tiffany because they have been reading the series. And they thought it was something that I would like. And they were totally right. I do really like this. I still have a volume 2, but I haven't actually continued yet. But I will. I do plan to very soon. And so this is a dystopian world about these like giant Titan monster creatures who terrorize humanity. And you're kind of trying to figure out why this is happening. What are they doing here? Where did these giants come from? There's just a lot of questions at the beginning. So I thought the art style was pretty gruesome and grotesque. It definitely has some horror elements, some very disturbing panels. Not like too disturbing where I would be like having nightmares probably, but some shocking panels for sure. And an interesting start to a story. So I am interested to continue. In spot number 7, I'm going to put The Long Loneliness by Dorothy Day. This is her autobiography. And it was also for a read-along that is currently happening. This is for our Lent read-along that I'm doing with the same booktubers that I read Dorothy L. Sayers with. And so we'll have a live show on this really soon on March 23rd or 24th. I forget which one. I'll link it down below. But this one is great. I really liked learning about Dorothy Day. I loved reading from her perspective as well. She was a Catholic social activist. She came to Catholicism a little bit later in life, and she took her activism with her into her Catholicism, which was so interesting to read about. Like someone who didn't quite grow up with the faith, but came to it later and brought their life experience with them. And I love hearing about those stories. And she was really concerned about the poor, really concerned about the state of America and the way that the classes relate to each other. And she just wanted to serve humanity. She was a reader, and she loved learning and reading and like being with her nose in a book. But more so than that, she was a practical person and wanted to get her hands dirty, wanted to directly serve the poor, the orphans, the widows. That was really what her focus was. And she's just really inspiring. So I'm really looking forward to chatting with the other booktubers about this. And if you read it with us, definitely join us for our live stream so you can chat with us as well. We've been having a good discussion in my Discord as well. There's some good comments about this book from everybody who's been reading. So thank you for those of you who have been participating and following along. It's been a really great experience. So yeah, this one was great, and one that I'm really excited to talk about soon. If you see me petting someone, Dusty is sitting right here. You just can't see him. I'm like petting him, so maybe it looks weird on the camera. But next up, it's kind of, oh man. Okay, I might be changing my mind. Oh no. Okay. No, I'm gonna leave it. I'm gonna leave it. I'm gonna leave my ranking as I put it. Next up, I'm gonna put Breaking Dawn by Stephanie Meyer, which is kind of, I feel a little bad putting it above Dorothy Day. It's how I feel. I don't know. I had more fun reading this book. So as far as my enjoyment level, this was super fun. I've been rereading the Twilight series. I haven't read it since this book came out in 20-something, early 2000s, 2008 or something. So I haven't read it since then, and boy, has it been fun revisiting these. I also rewatched the movies and realized that I had never actually watched Breaking Dawn Part 2, the movie. So I was watching it and I was like, wait, I've never seen any of this before. So I finally finished watching all the movies as well. But what can I say about Breaking Dawn? It's a great time. It was an era, you had to be there, but also, even if you weren't there in the 2000s when these were being written, if this was not part of your repertoire then, they're still fun now. I still think you could jump into them and have a good time. Do not expect great literature. Definitely expect some questions in this book. There are some things where you're like, I don't know about that. That's too convenient, or that wrapped up a little too nicely with a bow. So, I don't even care. It's still such a fun time. It's nostalgia with me as well. They're part nostalgia and also just partly just compelling writing. I think Stephanie Meyer is a really compelling writer. Say what you will about this series. It gets a lot of hate, but I'm a twihard forever. No hate here. Okay, so we're getting to the top 5, the creme de la creme. I just finished this one a few days ago, but I'm going to go ahead and include it in my winter wrap-up rather than spring, because I read most of it in the winter, and that is The Bullet Swallower by Elizabeth Gonzalez James. I haven't really talked about this book a lot on my channel yet, so I'm excited to talk to you about it now, because I haven't seen a lot of feedback on this yet on BookTube, and I really think it should get a little more attention. This is a new release. It was my January choice for Book of the Month, and I really picked it on kind of a whim, but I had like an inkling that it might be something that I would like, but I also was really not sure about it because I'm not really big on Westerns. I haven't really even read any Westerns, but there was something about the opening of this book, the writing, that drew me in. I could tell that this writer is very skilled. It's beautiful. It's very, very good prose, very well constructed prose. So that hooked me right away. It's a little bit more literary fiction than historical fiction, and it has magical realism in there. So I think I saw a comparison to like Gabriel Garcia Marquez, and I think that is a good connection to this book, but I think this is actually easier to read than Garcia Marquez. I can never remember the order of his name, sorry. But I think this is actually more readable than that, and the magical realism is not confusing. It's not like when you're reading some magical realism where you're just going along and then you get super disoriented. It's not that kind of magical realism. It's a little more clear cut than that. I loved this. Its characters are likable but also very unlikable. But it is an anti-hero story, so just know that going in. Your main characters are not necessarily good people, but that's what the book is about. It's about a family and sort of like their family curse and the decisions that like the great-grandfathers have made and how those decisions have trickled down throughout the family and how they've affected them and what the consequences are of their bad actions. And so there's a lot of gritty scenes. It's violent. So if violence is something you do not like to read, well, no one likes to read violence, but like if you're like absolutely no violence, don't read this because it has some pretty intense scenes. I never felt like it was anything more intense that I could handle, but I think depending on your threshold, it could be for some. So it's a violent book. It's a dark book. It's got very heavy things that happen in it, very sad things. But overall, I really like what this book did and what the result was. I just thought it was great character work, beautiful writing, a setting that I was really just steeped in, and I couldn't look away. It's such a good book. It's really good. I think not for everyone. Literary fiction, a bit violent, a bit dark. So if those are huge turnoffs for you, I don't think you're gonna like this. But I really, really enjoyed it. I thought it was great. I will have a better review probably in my wrap up. I feel like that was a little bit rambly. So I just want you to know that this was 5 stars. I loved it. I loved it. Next up, I have Lord of the Rings in Various Places. So I've been going between my ranking here, but I think I'm going to put Two Towers in spot number 4, just because I do feel like the pacing of Two Towers is not my favorite on this reread. I think I wish we would get to Frodo and Sam earlier. The first 60% of this, we don't see Frodo and Sam, and they're really my favorite part of this book. So I kind of struggle through the opening of this. I don't like love Rohan either, and that's a really big part of this. So the Two Towers is a bit of a drag for me in certain places. Maybe that's an unpopular opinion, but that's how I feel. And on reread, I can confirm that is how I feel. So I'm going to put the Two Towers in spot number 4. Number 3, I'm going to put The Hobbit. I loved The Hobbit this time around, more than I thought I loved The Hobbit. I didn't know that I loved The Hobbit so much, but I really, really did. I just think it's so fun, and it is succinct, and I really just loved Bilbo as a main character, and I don't know what else to say about it, so I'll just end there. But I loved The Hobbit this time around, probably my favorite time reading it. And then in my favorite of the Lord of the Rings so far is the Fellowship. I love Fellowship. And I think it's like just the opening the adventure, being in the Shire, learning about the world. I just loved the Fellowship the most this time around. I haven't done a reread of Return of the King yet. I will. That's coming up in the next couple weeks. So I'll be interested to see if Return of the King would be on top of this one for me, or Fellowship is really my favorite. But it was this time around. Just had a great time. I love so many moments about the Fellowship of the Ring and the vibe and everything and meeting our characters and being in the Shire. I just love the Fellowship. So that was kind of a surprise. I actually thought, before my reread, I thought I was going to like the Two Towers more, but I liked the Fellowship more. So that was kind of a surprise. All right, spot number 1, our favorite book of the winter. One that I will come back to again and again, which is why it got spot number 1, is Joyan Christ's Presents by C.H. Spurgeon. I actually started this in November with the read-along that Tiffany was doing, and Dia and Chrissy, and they did some live shows on it. They finished it in November. I started it in November, never finished it, didn't finish it till January, and it was such a good book to start the year with. Oh my goodness. It has just great, beautiful writing. Spurgeon was a Victorian pastor, so he writes with a bit of an older style, but it's so beautifully crafted. It's so artful, and he has just so many wonderful, deep perspectives on biblical text. This is about Christ in your life and how to just dwell in Christ's presence, even when things are not going well in your life. And I just think that it's such a timely book for any point in your life, whether things are going well or they're not going well. If you're a Christian, this book will just encourage you, and it's like almost like a warm hug. It comforted me. It also like helped me like work through some emotions and things that I was feeling. And it just reminded me what a gift we have in Christ and being children of God. And it was just wonderful. It's something I will read again and again in my lifetime. I can't wait to read it again. As soon as I was done with it, I just wanted to restart it all over again. So yes, spot number 1 was easy to pick. I already knew what number 1 was going to be before I ranked everything else. So it's just that much above everything else. So if you've never read this, I do recommend it. If you've never read Spurgeon, I highly recommend trying Spurgeon. So yeah, those are my rankings. That's it. We did it. Let me know what your favorite book was that you read in the winter. I would love some recommendations for things that I could pick up in the future. And let me know if you have any thoughts on any of these books. And if you would have ranked anything different, I would love to know that as well. Thank you so much for watching this video today. I hope you have a great rest of your day. You can subscribe to the channel if you want to see more from me. And I also have other social media links in the description box. Have a great rest of your day. Keep reading great books. And until next time, bye-bye.